All right, welcome back to Weissbier with your hosts Azlan Graves and Darren Binema. Today we're joined by Conrad Gmoser of Brassneck Brewery, a brewery whose name has become closely tied to thoughtful, process-driven beer here in BC. Before co-founding Brassneck, Conrad spent time at Steamworks Brewing Company, working alongside Shirley Warren, an experience that helped shape a brewing style grounded in precision, curiosity, and a real respect for the craft. Brassneck, that approach shows up in every pint. Beers that are nuanced, intentional, and often a bit of a nod to those paying close attention, including today's beer, Umlaut, one of a few that may taste better from the can than on draft. And with BCO Beer Awards in 2022 silver, 2024 silver, and 2025 gold, it's clearly the work that's paying off. And with that, welcome Conrad.
Thanks for having me.
Hey. Yeah. With this, we usually like to start a little bit off for those who do not know a bit of your story, your first exposure to craft beer, and how'd you get to where you are now?
It was a little bit accidental, but I had, I moved out to Victoria after finishing an architecture degree, and I was hanging out in Victoria, and just happened to buy a copy of Papazian's A Joy of Homebrewing. And I was actually buying it as a gift for my brother's girlfriend's father, but I cracked it and just read the whole thing, and a whole bunch of red lights went on in my head, and I was like, I really, really need to do this. At the time, I had just bought an old VW van. I had a friend, and his uncle was Barry Liddell, formerly of Longwood. And at the time, he had yet to become a brewer at Spinnaker's, and he had this amazing brewery in his garage. So I went out to buy this old crusty VW van, and he offered me a beer, and then I saw his shed, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And he said, yeah, you should just go to Spinnaker's and talk to Jake, who was the brewer there at the time, and ask him if you can ride along for a day. And I did that. I quickly went down the rabbit hole, and I ended up, at the time, a little bit after that, my girlfriend and I had a baby daughter, not entirely planned, but very welcome. And I needed a real job at a certain point. So I found like one architect in Vancouver out of many who returned a phone call and took me on, and I was starting my kind of professional journey. It just turned out that he was one of the partners who started Steamworks.
Oh,
yeah, he didn't stay in the business for long, but his office was in the same building that Steamworks was in. So I didn't know all that right away, but when I moved to Vancouver, I had another friend who had moved to town. He was on the same sort of curve as me. Just so happened I moved about 4 blocks away from Dan Small's original homebrew store on Commercial Drive, which was incredible. Really kind of amazing to like have that at that time when there wasn't a lot going on. And I talked to my friend. I was like, hey, you're homebrewing, I'm homebrewing. I'm wanting to really start doing all grain. I have a garage, like a shed basically. And we started brewing in my shed. And then
Do you remember what some of the first beers were that you did all grain?
So I remember stout being probably one of the first, probably, a good thing to start. But I was excited about stouts back then.
Yeah.
I remember doing, a really exciting IPA with like whole leaf East Kent Golding that were probably ancient. That kind of like woody,
just like
herbal,
brownish yellow.
Yeah. That was, and we were stoked. We were just like, this hot flavor is amazing. I mean, I think the most exciting part was just the process back then.
Yeah, it truly feels like alchemy when you figure it out.
Yeah. So I was doing that in the background, and then at a certain point in the office, my boss kind of pulled me aside and said, "Hey, our office is getting slow. We really like you. We want to keep you around, but we're running low on work right now, and we have to lay you off. But we're about to open this brew pub downstairs. Would you like to work on the construction crew?" And I was like, "Hell yeah!" I had previously worked a couple of years in construction, and so weirdly, like I was the first person to like pick up a tool and do a thing for the project that became the Steamworks Brew Pub, and then I got to see. I was just there on the ground for the whole build, which was crazy. It was very abbreviated. We were working 7 days a week, and during that time, uh, once we got a little ways along, I got to know Shirley and also Harley, who's still currently brewing at Longwood. He was the assistant brewer at the time, and that was really exciting to see this brewery come into shape. Back then, when there weren't a whole lot of other places around, there was, Yaletown opened a little earlier than Steamworks, but not by a whole lot. And then, I kind of I got quite friendly with Shirley and Harley right off the bat, and then went back to my job in the office eventually. And then Steamworks was such a success that very quickly they opened another brew pub in Campbell River called Cog and Kettle, and they sent Harley up there to be the brewer. And I remember Shirley asking me if I knew any big dumb guys. And I was like, yeah. Like, I find me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for a while, I would come in the morning and put my rubber boots on and clean some tanks with Shirley or mash in and whatever needed to be done. Grab lunch, and then I'd head upstairs and sit down at my desk and do some architecture work.
That's a fun way to mix it up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was. I mean, I was so excited about it at the time. It was really, I was just I was just so interested in it. And eventually my boss Soren pulled me aside and said, the office is getting busy, the brewery's getting busy. I think you have to decide which job you want. And it was an extremely easy decision for me. I remember my dad kind of scratching his head a little bit. I'd gone to school for 5 years to be an architect, and now I was just taking a hard left turn. But I feel really fortunate that I had that opportunity at the time.
At least the commute didn't change that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then it just kind of worked out that Shirley eventually was quickly was working on some plans to open a brewery in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, called the Queen Molly, and I was very green, but I think that both Soren and Eli, I'd sort of proven my worth, and they were willing to take a chance on me. I'm glad they were. I think there was a lot about me that was unproven at the time, but I ended up taking over the reins from Shirley. I was young, inexperienced, but very super excited to be making beer, and it just turned out to be a good environment for that.
What were kind of some of the things that, looking back on, you can't believe you worked around or miss working with?
I mean, it was a pretty good brewery for the time. I mean, it was that was 95. It was commissioned, and I know you've worked on it, Azlan, probably not a ton. It was tight. Soren used his architectural skills to leave the smallest amount of room for the humans working in the brewery. So there's no wasted space in that brewery. I mean, it's interesting to see what you can get away with, but it was difficult. Also, it had 3 fermenters, and that place started to sell a fair bit of beer. 12 conditioning tanks. I'm a very technically minded person. I remember I had an Excel spreadsheet graph to manage how to optimize the fermentation schedule to keep 8 beers on tap, and it wasn't easy. And at the time they wanted 6 regular beers, which is also not easy. So I think that was the challenge that I took on, and that was probably the most difficult part of it. I miss the mixer on the mash tun because Brassneck has canoe paddles. We can talk about that a little later with the beer that we're going to be drinking.
Yeah.
I miss that for sure. Also, yeah, it's funny, the brewery at Brassneck is way more old school in its design. So this one, the brewery at Steamworks, I remember we were doing we were doing the build, and it's a classic mash tun where the mash tun's off the ground. You have a hatch, you can scoop the spent grain out. And Shirley was walking around, and she's like, "Can we just like put a hole in the floor?" And they're like, "Yeah, all right." And they just like cored a
Yeah.
hole through the floor, and there's a big funnel, and you basically put a barrel down in the parquet and just fill it
Just
up like
drops
that.
straight through.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to joke about, getting someo's convertible down there. And
Yeah. Could definitely play a prank on somebody.
yeah. So that was pretty nice too.
What were some of the beers that you like developed during those times, like for Steamworks? Are there any that have like stood the test of time during that time?
So Shirley, like the first beer she ever made was her nut brown ale, which at the time was kind of had a little bit of a legendary. It was like one of her specialties, like a really rich, kind of heavy brown ale. And when she left, she didn't want to leave any recipes behind, which was, is not normally how it goes. I don't think there's a brewer in the land who doesn't change recipes once they show up at a brewery, but to have to make all new recipes is like a little bit unusual. And so Eli wanted a beer called Nirvana Nut Brown Ale. And so I that was probably like like at the time felt like a task where I had to follow Shirley's brown ale with a somewhat more drinkable version of a brown ale that would keep the beer drinkers, like kind of be in the continuum.
Yeah. Go and ask it for the next pint.
Yeah. And then that one became like a really regular beer that was like just a part of the roster. I think that was like my first challenge. I remember, so we had an Empress IPA, and back then I was like, okay, we got to dry hop this. Like, that was really exciting. We used plugs of East Kent Goldings, the plugs that are meant to fit in casks.
Inside a cask, yeah.
And I got someone to weld like little hooks so we could tether a bag of plugs of East Kent Goldings in the conditioning tank.
Sweet.
And it was like, it's kind of fun to think about. Like, back then you're like, oh, I can really taste the hops. And it was like just like such a mellow version of what an IPA is when you like think of it now. Those are like, that was kind of those are one of our mainstays.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I think they redid like a version of Empress not too long ago for like
kept
an anniversary.
Right.
Or that brand. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, like
maybe not the EKG plugs, but
yeah.
Hard to find now.
Yeah, those I think you have to hunt around for those these days. But I remember they were actually quite reasonably fresh because they were packaged in smaller packages. Yeah. So they're actually like, if you're looking for some semblance of freshness, not too bad.
And then from there on to Brassneck, how did that come about?
I mean, I spent my tenure at Steamworks was pretty lengthy in the end. I was there for 16 years.
Wow.
I was pretty young when I showed up there.
You were much younger,
yeah. But it was a really great place. I raised a young family. It was manageable. Still you had to keep an eye on everything, but we weren't growing like crazy or anything like that. So I remember one day, the day I met Nigel Springthorpe, I was like, the weird thing about the brewery there is you're literally in the middle of the restaurant.
Yeah.
And Nigel came down, and he actually had his hat in his hand and was kind of like crumpling it up, and he started talking to me, and I thought he seemed like a nice guy, and I was like, oh, he's gonna ask me for kegs of beer, and I'm going to tell him to take a hike, because that's like pretty much what we did back then. But he started talking about what he was doing at the Alibi Room, and I thought, oh my god, finally there's someone who's actually doing a real beer bar in Vancouver. And so I was like, of course we'll sell you kegs. And it was like, they were the only people we sold kegs to. He'd give me a call, he'd show up, whatever we had that was interesting. And back then he really was kind of doing shout outs to the brew pub brewers, because that was where the more interesting beer was happening in the province. And we became friends, and Alibi just happened to be on my bike ride home, so I of course stopped there all the time for beers. And I saw him one day, and he was like, would you come over to my place and just have a beer? I just want to chat with you about something. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. We both lived in East Vancouver, and I remember telling my wife, I'm like, Nigel's going to ask me if I want to start a brewery.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I went over to his place, and he's like, hey, I'm just gonna put this out there. You can think about it as long as you want. Say no if you want to say no. And he's like, what do you think about starting a brewery? I'm like, yes, let's do it. Like I just knew it. I was ready myself, but I also knew Nigel well enough at the time
Seemed
that
like
I
a
wanted
good,
to.
sound person to work with.
Yeah, I just think like on a personality level, I think we were coming from similar places. And I'm really glad you know, he, I'm someone who takes a long time to make decisions, and he was the one who just like had the fire. He wanted it to happen, and it was the right time for me to try to do something. We had, I think like anyone who started a brewery back at around that time, we opened in 2013. In retrospect, there's so many things we didn't know.
Yeah.
But it was really good timing back then, and we were just like, this has to work. Like how could it not work? Today, I'm like, there's a lot of ways it could not work. It's a different time, but I'm really glad that we got it started. It was a lot of work, and at that time, Steamworks was owned solely by Eli. He was actually really understanding when I told him that I was planning on starting something else.
Yeah.
So I actually had a nice transition out of Steamworks. I had hired Tack Jeanette, who's brewing at Gladstone at the moment. I was able to be around long enough for him to get comfortable there, and also worked with John from who's at Backcountry.
Okay.
I'd hired him as I was leaving. I knew he was a poker player, and I'm like, he's like basically paying his bills playing poker at the time.
Oh wow.
And I was like, he could come in 2 days a week and work with Tack and play poker the rest of the time.
Yeah.
And I think it ended up being a good transition for both of those guys too to the rest of their careers.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah,
nobody,
I remember when
nobody
you
knew
guys,
that place better than you. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I was gonna say, I remember when you guys were opening Brassneck, that you were just about to open, and you and Nigel were growing these like massive beards.
Oh my god!
Almost out of like some sort of like protest of like, okay, this is I don't know if it started as a bit or what, but in the end, it was like kind of like, okay, this is how long it takes to open up a brewery in Vancouver.
Just about ruined my marriage. But Nigel, at one point, he just seized me by the shoulder. He's like, we have to keep our beers going until we're open. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And then the hilarious thing is, like, that was the first year of Apens for Gloves, the boxing tournament that the restaurant industry did. And so Nigel shaved his beard off for the boxing match. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, we're supposed to be growing our beards. But the hilarious thing is, he just regrew a giant beard in the time it took me to grow. Yeah, I don't 100%. But it was pretty good when we were, especially working on things like, tasting rooms were not allowed at that time. We were busy. All the brewers were busy lobbying government, and it's pretty great when you show up and you can say, this is how long it's taking us to get a brewery off the ground.
Yeah,
and you look like Rip Van Winkle, like.
Yeah. I'll try to find some photos of that and put it on our Instagram. I vividly remember them.
I've got a couple of photos that are pretty hilarious I could share with you.
Perfect.
But it was, luckily, it really did change the brewing industry. Just that a big thing was tasting rooms. We'd all been down to Portland and Seattle and San Diego, and you're just thinking, why this has to be something we can do up here. And once that changed, it really changed the game. I think we're like a beer drinkers city to rival any city that makes good beer. I think at this point in the game.
Yeah, for sure.
We should get into the beer so that you got something to drink between all this talking.
Oh,
got a wet
so that was a lot of talking. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to crack a beer.
I'm just saying you're probably thirsty. We'll talk more.
Yeah. So the beer we're tasting today is the Brassneck Umlaut.
Umlaut, yeah.
Which ironically doesn't have an umlaut.
No, and I see it spelled with an umlaut a lot, and that is not correct.
Not correct. 5%. and on the can it says Hefeweizen. On the website, I think you guys call it like a German wheat beer or something like that. But yeah, maybe just tell us a bit about the history of the beer, and I think it's one of the first beers that you guys did, and that it's still kicking today.
Yeah, it wasn't like a sort of, it wasn't one of our very early ones, but it's yeah. So like Weissbier's been a bit of a holy grail for me, I would say, as a brewer. My father is Austrian, and he has a bunch of friends in southern Germany. So when I was like 18, I went traveling to like Austria and Germany and Switzerland, but I had friends in the Stuttgart area. This was late 80s, and wheat beer was really cool at the time in Germany. It had sort of had a revival.
Okay.
So I was hanging out with some people who were a couple of years older than me. They smoked drum cigarettes, drove insanely fast, and they all drank a Weissbier. And I drank beer, but I didn't have any opinions about beer. So I was like, all right, I'll drink this stuff with you.
Yeah.
And I still can remember how like spicy it tasted, like cinnamon and cloves. So once I got into beer, the Weissbier was just something that I always wanted to like kind of try to make that in a respectable way. But it was elusive. I got the yeast. It was good. I just never quite took a long time like to feel like I was really, really happy with it. I think it's what's interesting about it.
Sorry, keep going.
It's just such a process driven beer. Is I think what's interesting about it.
Yeah,
what were some of the parameters
where you started, or
yeah, like what were you looking for that you were missing? I guess
I think it was the balance I was looking for. The balance between spice and fruitiness. So I think back when Steamworks, we would use the Y yeast, what's the strain number again? The 68 strain from Y yeast. It's very banana like, but not super clove like. And back then we also did a beer called Roggenweizen, where we use a bunch of rye. Actually, that one was a fun beer to do. Rye works really well with this yeast.
Yeah,
you end up getting more spicy,
spice on spice. Yeah.
So that was, and like when we started Brassneck, I wanted to do something like Roggenweizen, but we did a beer called Multiveizen, which had rye, oats, wheat, corn, and barley, kind of like a multi-grain Weissbier. Also, just like if you hate yourself, use rye and oats.
Yeah.
And have
and
fun
corn.
brewing your beer. But I think the like what I would say in recent times, what we've done a couple of things where I used to ignore malt with Weissbier. It's such a yeast driven beer. I thought it doesn't matter what malt you use.
Right.
Started to change our mindset on that and start to use malt that we really liked. In this case, we're using the Bayerman Bohemian Pils, which has a nice like kind of bready sweetness to it. Using also a German wheat malt, and I'm not not a snob about it, but I think that's what they're using in their Weissbiers.
Yeah.
I think it turns out that all those things matter.
Yeah. And is the Y yeast 3068? Is that the one that still is the one, the Weinheim-Stefan?
So this yeast actually, Ian Hill at the time he was at Yaletown, but he actually reached out to the Weinstefan Hefebank, and he was looking for a unique, and I know they made a very respectable Weissbier back in the day. I mean, it's kind of hilarious. We joke about it. No one cared. We're toiling away.
The Yaletown one.
just people in general, like it's a niche thing. There's a few people who care. But so Ian had talked to them, and they recommended this W175 strain, which is also a very typical Weissbier strain, but probably emphasizes the clove and the spice, clove and spice a little bit more. A little bit less banana than the W68 strain. And so Ian got this sent over. If you order from the Hefebank and Weihenstephan, you pay for the yeast, but you pay more money for the certificate that's written by the dude in the white lab coat, the certificate who gives you the certificate of authenticity.
Wow.
So the strain that we have is from Ian ordering it from the Hefebank.
So you've just kept that slant going. You've kept that bank.
Yeah, it's a really nice strain. It's like, and then so a couple of things happened. One of our brewers, Alex, who's gone back to school now, he's really passionate about wheat beer, and we were like, okay, let's go full Deutsch on the mash program. We're gonna do ferulic rests, protein rests, 2 saccharification rests, and mash out, all with canoe paddles.
Yeah,
and we
boy, are my arms tired.
Like we were like, let's just do it once, and then we can be like, we don't, if it doesn't make any difference, we can just go back to what we were doing before. And we did it, and then we were like, oh damn, no, we have to keep doing this. The beer is better. And the other thing that I don't really believe in brewing dogma on the whole, but we were like, let's try this rule of 30 out. Are you guys familiar with the rule of 30? It's like this.
Let's go through it.
Chain geometry or no?
So there's, I don't know if it's a bit of a German brewing urban legend or not, but it's this idea that your starting fermentation temperature and your pitching temperature and your fermentation temperature should equal 30. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but we're like, let's try it out. So we pitched at 13 Celsius and fermented at 17. And the beer was really good. And that's what we do now. And I think that basically, I don't think you have to follow that rule per se. If you look at typical German recommendations, they're going to tell you to ferment 18 to 20 Celsius, which is sensible. This is all... Everyone's going to have a different opinion. Some people want lots of banana. If you want lots of banana, ferment warmer. But if you start cooler, you suppress the esters, and that allows the phenols to express themselves. So you'll get a more spicy beer. Personally, I really like that clove, cinnamon kind of character. So I think that, I don't think you have to follow any specific rules, but I think this yeast we found, you could ferment it at 15 if you wanted to. It would get the job done. I think you get a bit more sulfur initially when it's colder, but there's no problem with esters. There's esters in this beer.
Yeah.
It's like the esters are coming anyway. It's just if you really ferment warm, those esters will kind of crowd out the palate.
And then with this, I know like at Brassneck, you guys have a few different fermenters. Are you doing it in Cylinder Chronicles or are you doing it in your open fermenter?
I prefer to do this one in the open fermenter. I do think you get a little less scrubbing of the beer in an open fermenter. I mean, the open fermenter that we have is like a little bit of a brewer's folly. Like I was really excited to do, top fermenting ale yeasts, like English ales. And so we were ordering some Chinese equipment. So I actually did a shop drawing for, it's basically like a big bathtub. And so it's nice. Like we don't actually crop a lot from the top of that fermenter in practice, but it's actually really good for fruit beers because it has a flat bottom. I didn't think of that at the time. It's just like, it just turned out that when we do a fruit beer, we get this big mat of fruit material on the bottom of the fermenter, and it's kind of useful. But I do think the couple of beers we like to make in that fermenter are this beer in particular, and also English mild, just something a little better about it in that fermenter. If we use the Hook Norton yeast, we'll use it in that fermenter too. Yeah.
Yes.
So going back to this yeast, you're keeping it like alive the whole time you've had it, or like are you getting new pitches of it coming from the Hefebank?
So
Curious
I'm
about that.
I'm like a I mean I've been a yeast nerd from, since the 90s basically. So when I started brewing at Steamworks, like, back then we used Nottingham, like that was our house strain. Nothing wrong with Nottingham, it's just not very
Yeah.
interesting. Very reliable. One of these days we should do a beer with Nottingham just for old time's sake maybe.
Yeah.
But that's what we had to work with. And I was all fired up. I'm like, okay, we need to start messing around with other yeasts. And at that time I was, if Brewers Publications was putting out a new book, I was buying it. Um, yeah, I guess this is 1996. I actually pulled it out today just to take a look at it. I bought a book called First Steps in Yeast Culture by Pierre Rajat, who was kind of one of the pioneers behind Cheval Blanc, or actually it was Cheval Blanc in Montreal, and he was just a really interesting brewer, scientist, and he wrote this quite to the point manual on yeast culture for like tailored to small brewers and home brewers with really good illustrations. And I absorbed it all, and I was like, all right, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Got a sterilizer and basically started keeping yeast on slants and devising a pretty ad hoc propagation system at Steamworks. So, like I continue that now, and a lot of the strains we have are, they're white labs or YU strains, but this one from the Hefebank I maintain on slants, and it kind of gives us like flexibility to roll strains a lot. We propagate every week basically.
Wow.
So if you look at our list, there's probably like a half a dozen yeast strains represented because we propagate to most of the time. Yeah, it's like a way to keep some differentiation. This wouldn't be practical in a bunch of breweries, but like I just care about it a lot, and so I'm set up to propagate regularly. It's just something we do.
Once you have it as part of your routine too, it can be a pretty quick process. It's not. I feel like the first time I did it, it consumed like a day and a half of my time, and then after that, I was like, oh no, you just move it over, and you get more comfortable.
Like that. Yeah, now it's just, we have like a bit of
Conrad taught me how to do it, so he can teach anybody.
Perfect. Yeah.
I'd encourage people to do it. I don't think it's for everybody, but I think if you get a little bit fussy, it's actually like with us. What I like is we're in control of our schedule. Like we're not waiting for yeast to show up. We know we're doing the first steps for next week now, and it's kind of ready to go. And then you do get to like play around with things like co-pitching and that kind of stuff. But I do love having this one strain in particular. I'm a fan of it. I mean, I don't think Bavarian wheat beer is going to make a big difference for any brewery in BC anytime soon. It's just one of those styles that's a bit misunderstood, but I love it. We're going to keep making it.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's a great beer.
Thank you.
It is very like spice forward, and like there's still that classic banana flavor too, but it is like very clovey.
Yeah.
Phenolic. Like to me, I had my first like sips. I was like, oh, this is like, it reminded me of Saison in a way, but not like so intense like black pepper. But there's like more of like there's like a white peppery note to it.
I think they're all like there's this continuum of phenolic flavors.
Which was like, oh, this is very interesting.
We're also can conditioning this one.
I was just gonna say that probably helps with the spice as well, right? Like the carbonic
bubble
kind of.
I think so. Yeah, there's some people who also I think there's some researchers, they've done research in Belgium where they say that re-fermentation can create more tertiary aromatic compounds that have lower flavor thresholds and just kind of like give you more complexity. I mean, that's not really why we're like the main reason I think you want to can condition a Hefeweizen is just that extra carbonation.
Yeah,
really does like make this beer better.
I 100% agree. Like I think that's some of the Saison or the Weissens that I've had, especially local examples or even that I've made myself that I've been like unhappy with, is because it's like if it's even just like a normal carbonation, it just comes across as very sweet. Like higher carbonation really like it adds a little bit of bitterness, like that carbonic bite, which
it balances it.
balances out that like perceived sweetness of the esters and stuff. So I think that's key. Like if you have it on draft, like get it as high as you can that it'll still pour in the faucet.
I mean, I remember like when I first went to Germany, there was no such thing as draft Weissbier. It did not exist.
Oh wow. Yeah.
It was only bottle conditioned, and they were probably pushing 3.5 volumes or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, in glass you can. I mean, I got a little hats off to Daggerad. Those guys are maniacs. They're like can and bottle conditioning like crazy.
Yeah.
They have a whole dedicated room to it and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for canning is like.
What's the highest you've gone, Darren, with carb in a keg? Conrad and I
intentionally
were
or
just
unintentionally?
before we started.
I've gone unintentionally very high.
Yeah, gone and worked.
Oh, I don't know.
Where the keg didn't get sent back.
It's not something we do a lot of, so I would say we like maybe 2.8. I like my serving staff quite a bit, so, and I like my weekends, so I really try to avoid problems where it's going to be difficult. But if you have a good draft system, that'll do a lot for you. The worry is always like you send it out to Joe Blow's bar in
they can't pour
in
2.8.
Prince George, and they're like,
it's not happening.
Whereas if I knew it was all going to be poured in our establishment, then that's a different story too.
Like at Steamworks, I specifically put restriction in the lager line, and we carbed the lager to 2.8 out of a serving tank, and it poured great.
Yeah,
but you could never send a keg of that to anybody.
No.
Yeah.
It's too foamy.
Yeah. It just has to be, the draft system has to be designed for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This beer's a real delight. It's good.
Thank you.
There's
I do. I'm curious to push the carb a little higher, but I know you can run into trouble, especially when if people are cracking cans, on their shag carpet in their living room.
I mean, these are Weissbier drinkers. They probably have shag carpet.
So are you force carbing it to 2.5 and then adding a little bit of primings into your blending tank?
So we're basically carbing it to 2.5. That way it cans really nicely, and then we're right before canning, we're racking it into a tank with sugar and culture yeast. Not Reinheitsgebot exactly, but I'm pretty sure German brewers would use corn sugar if they could. I think it's flavor-wise, it works just fine.
Yeah. Is it the same yeast, or is it the
same? I'm using the same yeast. Okay. Yeah. I do believe in that. I think any different yeast you use is going to change your flavor profile for sure, especially in a beer like this.
Yeah, and then are you targeting like 3 volumes in the cans, or
targeting 3? So we probably lose a little bit in canning. I feel like we could push it a tiny bit more. I'm just being cautious still.
Wise.
The cans get you can feel it. You're like, oh yeah, there's something going on in there.
What is the maximum limit CO2 that double seam should be able to hold?
I should know the answer to that, but I feel like if you're going north of 3.5, you're pushing it.
I've measured a 3.8 before, and it's like, baby, those things are like, if they're warm, it's just like a rock, right?
Yeah.
You like ding that on the side of like anything, and
it's gonna go.
Yeah. So maybe not the best.
Not the beers you want to bring down the logging road for camping later.
Probably not. Yeah.
Made that mistake with Miller High Life once. Brought those camping, and then they literally just the whole night didn't settle.
Really? Yeah.
You talked about propagating this yeast up. What other yeasts do you have on hand that you like using or propping up? Or are they pretty basic?
We use a lot of basic ones. So we use Chico. I mean, I've always done a bit of co-pitching. Back in Steamworks, back then we had a lager that sold really well, and it was on a tight schedule. We had 14 days fermentation, and then it had to go into the cellar to age, and we were fining. I mean, we find fine beers at Brassneck too. And so what I started doing at Steamworks was I tried using the Anchor yeast, lager yeast once, and I wouldn't like that yeast very much. But what I started doing was using the Anchor yeast as a co-pitch to help with flocculation.
Oh, interesting.
It's a yeast that doesn't like being cold that much, but it loves to drop out. So since my Steamworks days and today still in Brassneck, we'll use, like right now we're using S23. We're using a dried strain, but we culture a little bit of Anchor yeast to add to the prop, and it's just strictly to co-pitch for flocculation purposes, and it doesn't really get in the way of flavor or anything, but it does just add that little bit of extra flocculation to the behavior of the yeast. And we do a couple
so
other
any
things
of those
like
blends are not really repitching at all, eh? Like
we'll repitch it a couple of times maybe if it's convenient. But I mean the nice, like dried yeast now is such good quality.
Yeah.
Like the crazy thing at Steamworks is we had this blend, and I can't remember what the main strain was now, but we come to me, but we had this. It was like co-pitched with the Anchor strain, and because we are on such a tight schedule, we would brew for a year, so 25 generations.
Wow.
And the only reason we recultured was because I thought it was a good idea to reculture. Like the beer was amazing, the performance was excellent. It was just so happy. I probably could have gone 2 years. I just thought that was a bad idea.
You get to a certain point where you're like, oh man, am I pushing it here? Yeah, just add a new pitch just out of superstition.
But we don't. Yeah, our rhythm at Brassneck, we don't have that kind of that same dynamic. But we've done, like, another example would be I did a collab with Scott from Woodcutters up in Whitehorse, and he came down, and probably like the most specific collab brief I've ever had, where he's just a super nerdy brewer, very very interesting dude, but he had like minerals dialed, like percentages of everything, and he's like, okay, let's do 80% Chico, 20% 1968 for yeast. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that's pretty specific, but sure, let's do it. And
by weight or by cell count?
We did by volume. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know you could get as nerdy as you want on that one.
Yeah, like, where does it stop?
Yeah, and I love the beer was great, and we've been messing with that since then because Chico is so dependable, but a little boring. 1968 has some really nice, just like extra estery character, and so we've been using that in a couple of beers too. And I think that's the fun thing with propagating yeast is you can mess around with blends like that.
Yeah, 1968 is like
like
Fuller's?
Fuller's, yeah.
Okay.
It's not wild and crazy, but it's definitely more interesting than Chico.
Yeah, has some like fruity esters, but not like too in your face. Yeah. No, that's good yeast. Yeah, I've had a couple beers where people have used that or like this like pub ale from Imperial in some like American style beers, and it does give it that like where Chico would be like pretty clean. It gives it like a little extra fruitiness in the mid palate, which is really nice.
Yeah. I think you can do that with any yeast. It's a little bit interesting. Take your tried and true Chico or whatever it is, and then add something a little interesting to it, and get something that's nice without being like over the top.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
You guys use a lot of local ingredients as well in your beers, like at Brassneck. What have been like seen you use like Field 5 malt? You've used a lot of Pemberton Meadows or Myrtle Meadows hops and local fruit naturally. What kind of characters has that imparted in the beer, and like what are some of the unique aspects of using those things that you've found?
Yeah, I mean we do like it's almost a little bit nutty sometimes where we keep doing different beers where we don't iterate a lot, so we don't always get like the ingredients totally figured out. But yeah, I'd like to do more with some Field 5 malt. We've only done a couple of brews with them. I'm definitely a big fan of Myrtle Meadows hops, and they're definitely some unique terroir coming out of there.
Yeah,
like we've done a couple
of
beers.
Have you used?
So their saws, which they don't grow a ton of. It's like a little unfortunate. The saws doesn't. It has a bit of a tough time in Pemberton because it's so hot sometimes. but it's like a much punchier version of Saaz. So we do like a Pilsner called One Saaz Fits All. Really very punny.
Yeah.
But really like that. Their Cascade is fantastic. It's like very just punchier than regular Cascade. There's something going on with their growing conditions where they definitely get more oil content. So their Cascade and Chinook we quite like. So we're using them a bunch. It's nice to have like a little bit of a relationship with some hop growers. I mean, I must be tough being a hop grower in BC, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. We just did a fresh hop beer with Tops hops where they had some Mount Hood.
Oh, nice.
I was looking for Sterling, and there's a schedule kind of thing that didn't work out, and I hadn't brewed with Mount Hood since ages ago. It was kind of fun to nice. Revisit Mount Hood.
In a different, in a completely different way too, as well in general.
Yeah. We've kind of masochistically stuck to doing a quince beer once a year. I wouldn't recommend. I mean, if you wanna have like a difficult day, process some quince. It's like chipping wood or something.
Someone told me you got to freeze it. That's the key, and then you mash it later.
A couple of things. Yeah, you can freeze it. That helps. We've done that before. Like, it's kind of crazy. It's such a weird fruit. We get a load of quince in, and it gets piled up in our cellar. And it smells incredible, like so amazing for like the weirdest fruit you've ever seen. It's so aromatic. I was, one year we decided to freeze it all, and I reached out to some friends. I found a guy who had some freezer space, and he was really helpful. And he's like, "Oh man, I traveled to Spain, and this region of Spain I go to in the fall. All the cab drivers they put like one or two quince on their dashboard to like perfume their taxi."
That's wild.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
It would work that well, I guess.
Yeah.
This air freshener.
And this year I was talking to Matthew from Twin Island Cider, and he does a lot of carbonic maceration. So that got me thinking. And we had a really weird harvest this year. It was like spotty. We had quince coming in at different times, and it was a pain in the butt. But I realized I could use carbonic maceration as a method to hold the fruit until we had it all. And so I took a couple of our yeast propagators and fired the quince in and blanketed it with CO2, and it actually was. So that's an alternative to freezing is carbonic maceration, because your fruit basically, it does start to break down slowly, but it's in an anaerobic environment. And so we did that with kind of like a third of our fruit we carbonically macerated, and then some of it we froze. And that was actually pretty interesting. Like, it smelled great. It's like processed way easier once it had been kind of stewing in its own juices a bit.
Mush, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I still wouldn't recommend quince because it's a pain in the ass, but I'm really happy with the last beer we did. I felt like we got. It's a weird thing. So for me, I always find when you first use quince, the beer doesn't taste inspiring initially in the fermenter, but then once it's in barrels for a little while, it like the flavor gets released. I think that you get that little bit of that wild yeast working on the kind of whatever's in there that releases the aromatics.
It's like some bound glycosidal
kind of stuff.
Things. Yeah. For somebody who knows a lot more about it than I do, but
yeah. And then another one, I think I'm a big fan of fir tips. And I used to gather all my own fir tips, and I'm trying to convince someone to gather fir tips for me, and I think they don't want to because they're a pain in the ass. I think spruce tips are just intrinsically easier to collect.
Yeah. And
there's nothing wrong with spruce tips. They're amazing. I love spruce tips. They're incredible. Like the stuff we got some from Powell River area. They smell like bubblegum, so fruity. But fir tips have this like delicate, like almost mandarin orange citrus character that's really delightful. Yeah.
Where do you find that? Like when you go to around Vancouver or outside of
I
there?
found a spot in the Chilliwack River Valley. You know, you're essentially pruning young trees. It's probably like not good. But you know, it's like I'm
Spread
trying
out.
to do it in moderation. Yeah. I mean, if I was really organized, I would find a farmer who had a Douglas fir tree on their property and get a lift and prune the part of the tree that's close to the road. You know, that they were planning. They probably like pain in the butt to have the tree growing into there anyway. You know, but I think you would need a really big lift to do that. I haven't gotten that organized yet. But you know, you look at a mature Douglas
Yeah.
fir tree, it's got buds to spare in the spring.
Yeah.
I think they're that anyway. One of these days I'll get organized and do it properly. But right now I've got a weird guy in Powell River who he collects spruce tips for us. They're quite lovely.
Now
I do have a sauce.
collect fur tips.
I mean, the really weird one I would love to try sometime is larch, but that's probably pretty unsustainable. You know, to go like into like a fragile ecosystem and start picking
Yeah.
green tips off of larch. I bet it would taste amazing though.
You just spin it to like a special project, get the
Right.
sanctions for it.
Yeah.
Rare.
Like plant.
Research. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I bet there's some cool flavor potential there. Yeah.
Sure.
Much of your product is sold directly in-house over the bar. Does having that face-to-face interaction kind of help with your like feedback loop and influence the beers that you're making?
I mean, for us, the whole idea of the genesis of Brassneck was to have people like we initially just like sell all our beer out our front door.
Yeah.
And then we did have a really nice honeymoon period where that was it. But I think the idea from the very beginning was to focus on the beer list and make that the reason that people would come in the front door in the first place. And I think that's still true. You know, where COVID was a pretty rough reckoning for most breweries, particularly for us. You know, we were kind of not a packaging brewery until then, and then now we are a packaging brewery.
Worse to me.
Yeah, I know. We're up for the challenge. It's just we didn't never set the place up for that.
Yeah.
But I still, in my mind, for better or for worse, like there's tension between being a good packaging brewery and having a good beer list. But for me, the beer list is the most important thing. So that's like all about the people who come in the door and they're like, what do you got? What's coming up? And we do get a lot of feedback. People like request really random beers that we haven't
requested that you that you'll never brew again.
I don't know if there's a beer we'll never brew again. I'm trying to think about that. There was one. So there is one from Steamworks days. One time we did an oyster stout with raw oysters. Probably the weirdest ingredient I've ever used. We had an oyster bar at the time. So we had a full-time oyster shucker on staff, and I was like, "Oh, well, if we're gonna do oyster stout, forget oyster shells. Let's do raw oysters." So I got the guy to shuck, I don't know, an unholy amount of raw oysters into a mesh bag. I put that in a 40-liter corny keg and racked stout onto it, and then left it overnight in the fridge, and then rack that beer off into two 50-liter kegs and diluted it a little bit. And it was surprisingly good. Still made, knowing what you did, it made me feel a little funny. But we had people asking for that
That's just
beer.
psychosomatic.
Yeah, I know, totally. People were asking for years for more of that beer. Yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of a fun stunt to do again, but I don't know if I feel. I'm not there's other things I'm not gonna probably do it anytime soon. But I'm pretty sure no one in BC has done a raw oyster stout.
Yeah, I remember I got
it wasn't lobster. Fishy. It was just more salty. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be salty.
Got a lobster beer from in
lobster
Holland.
Beer. That's insane.
Yeah, and I remember being like, well, I've had oyster stouts before. Sure, I'll get the lobster beer. That sounds cool. And I was thinking I remember Upright had an oyster stout that was quite not over the top. And I've had a few that I think are kind of slightly briny. They're cool. And I'm vegetarian. I'm like, this is not a flavor that's normally in my thing. And I get the lobster beer, and it came, and I was like, yeah, that's definitely a
like
lobster beer. Like,
Yeah.
that was like, it's not like the beer was bad. It was advertised appropriately.
Comes with a bib.
I was just like, there's no way.
I mean, Upright did a beer inspired by Captain Beefheart, and they had like a bunch of beef hearts in their beer.
Crazy.
Like, I'm kind of like, I don't know if that's a flavor journey that is necessary, you know.
Taken, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm like, hey, they did it.
Yeah. I'll start getting the raw oyster stout beer petition going for Brassneck.
I mean, we have a couple other ingredients that I think are a little not wild and crazy, but we've been like over the last few years been doing some beer with pomace from Bella, and that's a really nice project to do. Where like if timing works out, go out, help pick during the day, help press, and then I just like drive home like straight shot with pomace, great pomace in a bunch of buckets and dump it right in the fermenter that night. I really kind of love those beers. They're like a true hybrid,
Yeah. It's funny, like the piquette kind of style of beer, I guess, is kind of what it is. It's like the one situation where it's like if you were to just add water and sugar, you could charge more.
I mean,
you're actually making the beer.
I think it's superior to piquette.
Oh yeah,
because you're providing some body and that kind of thing. Yeah. Well,
also if you're getting from Bella, which is like a sparkling producer, you get like we've done that here with Neighborhood. Like if you're getting the sparkling grapes, they're like very gently pressed.
Yeah.
So then they're still like pretty intact. Like sometimes we'll even have like full like grapes coming back,
right?
Because they're just gently pressing it, and then if you add it fresh to beer, it's like the best.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Because we've tried it before with like pressed off whites, and it's like there's not an ounce of liquid left in them, and you add it to beer, and it's just like wow, you've added like a ton of polyphenols here.
Yeah, it can be pretty dry.
So getting that like barely pressed.
So not the last harvest, but the harvest before. That was like the kind of lost harvest in the Okanagan, and Bella decided, like a lot of wineries were bringing in American grapes because the province said that was okay, just considering how grim the situation was. And Bella decided to use some Marchal Foch, which is a cold tolerant variety, and that stuff has so much color that last batch we did, it was like bright purple. It was crazy.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah,
and that's your Changeling series.
Yeah, we call
it that separate.
The Rosé Changeling, that one. Yeah, I would say it's kind of in its own category in a way. The one we're using the pomace. This year's is going to be quite light because we got Pinot Noir and Gamay that had been just more extracted, but I think it's still going to be really interesting. Yeah, it's a fun ingredient. That I think you could. I mean, again, there's not that many people care about it, but it's actually a really nice hybrid. Like it really works.
Yeah. No, I agree. We haven't done those beers as much recently. For reasons that you alluded to, but when you do it, they're super
caring.
Yeah. Like, wow, it's beer and wine together. You'd think you get everyone into it, but it's like, no.
You just alienate both demographics.
Unfortunately. Like we joke about that constantly. We're just like, no one cares. I don't care. You just did something really cool, but
doesn't stop us for the most part, but after a while, it's hard.
Yeah. I think it's like, to me, the beer, like when you like a beer with pomace, like it should. Anyone who likes cider ought to like it. You just have to wrap your mind around it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's kind of got all the. It doesn't taste like beer, honestly. It tastes like something very much of its own.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And totally refreshing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
The perfect summer beverage.
Yeah.
Collaboration has always been a big part. It seems like for you, even from the Steamworks days, but then obviously continue with Brassneck. How do you kind of foster these relationships, and what's been something you've learned from some and or been able to share with others?
I mean, I think it feels like the collaborations are just like a feature of our scene now, which is really nice. I think for us, we did start like right off the bat collaborating with different breweries. I think probably one of the most notable ones would be the Spirited Dixmas, a beer that we brew. The kind of genesis of Brassneck kind of came down to Nigel buying the Dick's barbecue brew house when it closed down. That was his. I mean, if I was giving someone advice about starting a brewery, I would be like, don't buy your brewing equipment first. Like that, you can figure that out later.
Yeah.
But I think for Nigel, he just had to have it, and that was the thing that like kept him on the path, and I totally understand that. And so quite early on, Nigel was like, okay, we got to get the Dick's guys together and brew, like a recipe, more or less from the Dick's brew sheets, which we actually have a few of, and it's been a really cool tradition. Sadly, Tony DeWalt is no longer with us, but we're, now it's kind of almost like a nod to Tony.
On.
Totally, yeah, and his like, we got his leather jacket and shirt up in the tasting room. If you take a look, when you look up, and he's up there. And Dick's was like, it really was like kind of like a clubhouse for like the hop enthusiasts and the real hardcore like beer scene back then. Like Yaletown and Steamworks were, we weren't courting beer people in the same way. We were a much more mainstream kind of place. Of course we cared about beer. We tried to make good beer, but Dick's was like the epicenter, and so it's been really cool to like carry that on, and then you kind of do like back then that was like the IBU arms race was
I was
at
gonna ask
maximum,
like what's
yeah
the Spirit of Dixmas, like what's can you recite what that recipe doesn't have to be exactly, but like
I mean it's still
like
very
a snapshot
classic
in time.
Yeah, very very classic IPA. It used to be made with 1968. Now we're using a blend of Chico and 1968, and that's like Tony was still around when he agreed with that. 1968 is I mean, you can make a really good IPA with 1968. It's a little finicky. You can end up with a bunch of unwanted diacetyl in your beer if you're not careful. It can finish higher than you want it to.
Yeah.
But like we're doing like a little bit of crystal malt, but mostly two row. Tony liked gypsum and a lot of it, and it's kind of fun to have a beer that's like got that dry, snappy bite that gypsum gives you. I kind of more lean into the Vancouver's incredibly lovely soft water and cool the minerals down. But for the Dixmas, it's like we're putting gypsum in there and a bunch of it. And then mostly pretty like not absolute old school, but Centennial, Simcoe, hops like that.
Nice.
And it's kind of, I don't know, I'm still like Simcoe is still a great hop variety. Like we have all these newfangled ones. They're all crazy fruity, but sometimes you kind of want that backbone that some of those old school varieties give you. And I feel like we're
25 years of Simcoe this year. 30 years.
Oh, maybe it could be. Yeah.
25 sounds right.
Yeah. It's funny now. Like people like they kind of get excited when you give them a beer with some bitterness in it.
Yeah.
And it is like I think you need enough bitterness to it makes things satisfying. But we're definitely seeing like a little bit of renewed enthusiasm for West Coast IPA, like classic West Coast IPA.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit reassuring.
Yeah.
Moving back to clear beers, some hot side flavor. It's pretty crazy. I feel like honestly, it was only in the past probably 2 years myself really truly revisiting. I'm like, oh yeah, what will like a 10-minute edition actually taste like?
Yeah.
Because it's like all of the recipes I created while main
it's
street
like
was
all
like
all Whirlpool. Yeah,
all Whirlpool, or just move it to the tank. Start dip hopping.
Yeah, I think
there's like no hops.
I think you do get like there's some different flavor you get for sure when there's a little bit of boil contact.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm like these days I'm like I feel like I'm taking hops out of beers, not removing hop character, but more searching for that balance and trying to like really find the sweet spot where there's some yeast character and hop character and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's something that like a lot of people are kind of starting to, I don't know, understand or appreciate now that we found the extremes on so many ends. Like we found like how sour we can make a beer and how bitter we can make a beer. Like, how do we make it more drinkable?
Yeah.
How do we make sure people order more than one?
Yeah, funny. I feel like I still like I'm still interested in sour beers. I just don't like the word sour. I think it's the wrong word. I like using the word tart. You'll notice the wine industry never uses the S word. They just acid is incredibly important in wine. They don't say sour. They never ever say that.
No.
Yeah.
They also never say any wine is sweet.
Yeah.
Off dry.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, about language. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, Conrad, you've been in the industry a long time. What is like kind of keeping you going? Like what's exciting you about like what you're doing at Brassneck? But then also like what excites you about what you see in the industry here in BC?
I mean, I'd say if I think about BC and on the whole, I'm so impressed with how good BC beer is right now. Like I remember sitting around with Nigel thinking like no reason why this shouldn't exist here, and I think it's here. Like the quality on the whole is the best beers in BC are as good as any beers anywhere. That's really exciting. It's challenging because you if you're making beer, you gotta be putting some good beer out there. I'm still really enjoying being in this business. I think the quality of ingredients that we get to work with now are amazing. There's a lot of innovation in hops, malt, yeast. It's really interesting right now. So I just think to me, I'm like happy when I'm learning, and I'm still learning a ton. Like I'm spending a little bit of time now, like just being involved in the MBAA chapter in BC. There's a bunch of people putting a bit of effort into it. Graham Witz from P49 has really put a ton of effort into just making our chapter viable, and it's cool to see brewers just like gathering around and sharing technical information. Like that's the kind of stuff that keeps me going. And I still think it's a weird time in the business right now. It'd be easy to get jaded. Sometimes we sit around and have a beer and we're like. And we just it's like once in a while someone gets excited about a beer. You're like, oh, there's still some people still care. But yeah, I'm not bored yet.
That's great.
I was like just starting to get into this craft brew scene. What words of advice would you give them?
I mean, I think it's a little these days. Like if you were starting out and you really feel like you want to like go the distance in the business, you gotta find the right people to hitch your wagon to, because it's a tricky time right now. I think there's some, I used to always joke it's like brewing's a bit of a dead end job, anyway, but I think if you find some brewers who are still inspired and inspire you, that those are the people you need to look for. I do think there's still a lot to be learned from some home brewing. Not everyone's going to be a home brewer. Not every brewer is going to give you credit for being a home brewer, but I personally what I like about homebrewers is they put the effort in to figure that those things out on their own. And I know there's some brewers out there who don't give credence to that, but it means personally I'm like, yeah, you got there, you managed to build a little system at home and start messing around.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's how
Yeah,
all three of us started.
Yeah, and most of the I would say most of the leading lights in the scene, there's a lot of homebrewers there who just got their start. Maybe they didn't homebrew for long. I didn't actually homebrew for that long, but that's how I got started.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you got to look around and find a place that you feel you're going to be able to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's like finding somebody to help guide your interest in a way that is going to be productive. Yeah. And
Sweet. When you're not in the brew house, how do you like to spend your time? I know one activity that you like to spend your time doing.
I was thinking that too. Yeah. So basically, the first time I ever met Darren, I was playing on a ultimate frisbee team that was a hat league. So you just show up and find out who's on your team, and there's this guy named Darren. Seemed like a nice guy. And yeah, the interesting thing about I didn't really grow up as a team sports person, but when I moved to town, I made friends with Ian Hill. We were peers in the kind of brew pub scene, and he told me that he had a bunch of friends that he would get together with and play ultimate frisbee, and I'd never heard of it. So Ian dragged me out, and I was like, right away, I was like, all right, this is great. I get to run my ass off, and it was really fun. And it was a good crew. So I played Ultimate with him for quite a while. Then met Darren. I've recently played on the same team as James, who just took over for Azlan at Main Street.
Oh yeah.
At this point, I'm like a crusty veteran, but I still enjoy it. So chasing 25-year-olds around the field.
That's right.
So I like that a lot. I did, when I was growing up, I grew up in Canmore, and my dad was a mountain guide, and so I spent a lot of time skiing, hiking, climbing, backpacking, things like that. Those are all things I really like to do still. I don't do them quite as often as I ought to, but something I really enjoy. Like my mom is still backpacking. She's about to turn 81.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why?
That's right. You just did a trip with her last year.
Yeah, I've still got a plan. I'm planning to do a trip with her in August, and it's a little bit ambitious. So I'm going to be carrying some weight. I think
you're going to be the
go
Sherpa.
And go, but yeah,
literally,
that's the idea. But so stuff like that I like doing.
Great. Well, thanks for doing this podcast with us, Conrad. It's nice to catch up, and for us, it's been a while, and thanks for talking about your journey and all the fun things that you guys are doing at Brassneck. And thanks for sending me beer, getting beer to me. Shout out to Brad from GEC, who also sherped the beer up to me in Penticton.
Nice. That's right. Yeah.
Came here in one piece, so I don't know how many he drank, but some of it made it to me.
He probably deserved a couple. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. If people want to find this beer and other Brassneck beer, I guess best places to go is go to the tasting room on Main Street, right?
Yeah, we got it on tap right now.
Great. Yeah, try it out at Main Street or on Main Street at Brassneck Brewing. Yeah. And is it in cans around town too, or mostly just out of the tasting room?
We've been selling it to some of our wholesale accounts. It's it won't be around probably a couple weeks from now. It'll be gone, but it's out there.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I think we haven't had a couple stores pick it up in the Okanagan.
All right, keep an eye out.
Yeah,
sounds good. Cool. Yeah, well, thanks for doing this with us. And if you want to support Azlan and I, just tell your friends about the podcast at Why This Beer, and we're on Instagram, and you can hit us up there for new episodes of the podcast. Yeah, and there'll be more coming soon. But until next time, cheers.
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 Take it easy.